So you want to be a part of that? Also, this is sort of cool. Our choir is doing a special thing on July 2nd in honor of July 4th. And so they're practicing every Sunday between now and July 2nd. And they're also going to go to a retirement center that same afternoon. They're going to sing in both services, and they're going to Fox Ridge Assisted Living Center that afternoon. And they've been there before, and it's just a real blessing. So if you want to be a part of the choir, show up here at 2 o'clock today, and Miss Denise Wyatt, Pastor Denise, will be here and leading the choir, okay? All right. History makers, children age 4 to 11, you may head to the back door. There they go. They do amazing things in our History Makers class, and that's not just a cute name for us, it's real. We believe these children are the future of the world. I just want to make you aware of something. Some of you don't know, and we haven't talked a lot about it just because of how busy we've been. One of the missionaries we support is Prepare International. That's Randy Boyd leads that ministry. We've been supporting them for more than a decade, for a long time, monthly. And I just encourage you, if you don't give to missions, pray about that. We should all be giving to missions. Ask God, what should I give? Every month, you should be giving into something that's not about you. And when you give to Grace Fellowship, that's about us and serving us and our local community. But when we give to missions, every dollar goes to serve people we don't know. And everyone should be giving to missions. It's just a huge thing. Well, y'all know I don't really like to leave Lonoke County so much, but Randy has asked if Pastor Tim and I will come down to Nicaragua. That's another country. You may not be aware of that. It's in Central America. And Randy does training for local pastors there. And he asked that Tim and I could go and train the pastors for him, representing about 100 churches. We'll be all over Nicaragua for 1 week. We do 3 different schools in 1 week. And guys, I want to tell you, there's something that's really true. I planted this church 20-something years ago. Pastor Tim's been with us for almost that long. And you guys have changed my life. It's like, I think of those pastors, and my heart breaks for these pastors. You know, these are going to be a lot of small churches up in the mountains of Nicaragua, very, very, very impoverished place, you know. And but I'm going to tell you what, I know what a pastor does. A pastor loves the people. You know, a pastor cries with you when you cry. He's with you when your loved ones take their last breath. He's there for those people, and he's there when they celebrate, when they have graduations, when they have weddings. You know, you guys have invited me into your life for over 20 years, and who I am was shaped by you. It's not just I shaped your lives, because I believe whenever we give ourselves to the Lord blows on us, and the power of the Holy Spirit comes across me, and He makes a difference in your lives. The same thing happens to me. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago, and it's because of you. And when we go to Nicaragua the next week, tomorrow morning, we leave at like 6 a.m., the plane leaves, we're taking you with us. And there's something special about that. And so just be praying for the pastors down there. I just want to encourage them. I just want them to be encouraged and lifted up and to go on and to serve and to give and to give and to give with joy. And y'all have made it a joy to pastor this place. And I want to share that with them. Randy says this, it's very interesting, and it's a testimony about all of us. Randy said, you know, Alan, I go into hundreds of churches, Harvey's son, and he does. All sizes of churches all over the world. And he said, there's 2 churches that I would want to be a part of. And one is you guys, and the other one's his friends down in McAllen, Texas. He said, there's something special about Grace. I said, yeah, there is. It's a great place to be. And y'all make it a great place. And so y'all just be praying for us. And we're in the Song of Songs, right? And, you know, this has been a very challenging sermon series for me. I don't think I ever really paid a lot of attention. I read the book, but I never let the book in. Right? And so we've been in it for an eternity now. I don't know how many months we've been in this. We're going to really fly today, so put on your seatbelts, because I asked the Lord, I said, God, you know, everyone who's here, every single one of us came to church with something in our minds. There's a reason you came. You know, God has something in His heart too. You know that he has a purpose for today? You and I have different purposes, you know. God has a purpose. You're you. His purpose is to encounter you. When he thinks about today, his eye, I don't know how he can do it. He's infinite. He's worldwide. He's beyond the universe. But he can think about every single one of us. And the Song of Songs is a personal love letter he's writing to you individually. Even the 7 billion yous that are on the planet Earth today, our magnificent God can do that. And today he has one purpose for you. He wants to come and have an encounter with you today. He wants in your heart. And today is what we've been talking about. And this is this letter in Song of Songs. This is out of verse 13. It says, come and taste the fruits of your life in me. That's what the Shulamite woman says. That's what the bride said. Jesus, come and taste your fruit inside of me. And today I want to take you on a little journey. It's really interesting. You see, this begins with the groom. He's making us a promise. God is saying this to us. He says this, the bridegroom king says this, my darling bride, my private paradise, fastened to my heart. You're a secret spring that no one else can have. You see, back in those days when the kings, they had gardens that nobody else got to go in. And those gardens were surrounded by walls and they had gates with locks in them. And you just didn't walk into a king's garden. Only the king has the key to go into his garden. And I want to tell you, he's saying something to you today. Every single one of us have a garden inside that he thinks is beautiful, that brings him pleasure. And he's the only one that has the key that can unlock our hearts. And you know what the truth is? You and I, a lot of us have built walls around our hearts. We've erected barricades around our hearts. We put up towers with weapons in them to keep people away from us. And you have good reasons for that, right? I had a good reason to close my heart off. But I want to tell you, Jesus has the key to open your heart. He's the only one that can get in. And it's what he says about your heart. When he looks at your garden, he thinks it's beautiful. He said, you're a secret spring that no one else can have. You see, Jesus sees life inside of you that no one else can see. You see, he's not put off by your rough exterior. He's not put off by the way you smart talk him. He's not put off by your past. You know, he's not. He's not like us. He sees past the walls into your inside, and inside of you, he sees something beautiful and life. Literally, this is his letter to you. And you know, it's time. I want us today to get out of our intellectual stuff that we're locked up into. I want to go beyond your thinking into your heart. Beyond logic and reason into your heart. See, logically and reasonably, I can convince about any of you to close your heart up and never let anybody in. I know what that's like. You've been hurt, you've been neglected, you've been rejected, you've been left. There's 1,000 reasons not to let him in here. You think you're dirty, you think you're bad, you think you're lacking, you think you're not good enough. All of those things say, stay away from me, Jesus. Well, the church even taught you that Jesus can't look at you. But Jesus says, to me, you're my garden. He sees something inside of you, and he wants in. It's a bubbling fountain hidden from public view. You see, you're not a cistern. You're not a dried up well with stagnant water in it. You see, you may feel like that, but that's not the way he sees you. Your life's not over. You haven't missed it. He sees you as a sort, like an artesian well. You see, an artesian well, the water comes out of it's flowing, and it's always fresh. And then he says something that's just crazy to me. I can't get it around our mind. You see, the Bible tries to say this in 1,000 different ways, but he says that you're a perfect partner to him. Literally, if you're looking at a different version, New American Standard, New King James, or NIV, or whatever, they'll say you're his sister. Well, the Hebrew word there the word actually means of the same blood. You see, there's 1,000 ways to say it, but the truth is, every one of us have a harmony. We have a tune. We have a rhythm inside of us. And Jesus said, your rhythm perfectly matches me. Let me in. Let me in. Because when he comes in, it creates a harmony that changes the world. A new sound is produced that the world's never seen. And you and I spend our whole lives keeping him out. And a lot of us, I'm telling you, one of the things you need to lay down is your intellectual stuff. And start living by your heart. Because your mind will convince you that you're not good enough, that you're limited, that he's not who he is, the almighty God of the universe. All the evidence around you will say 1,000 things. The truth is, he says you're beautiful, you're lovely, and you're his perfect partner. And he has one desire today, and that's to come into your garden. He just wants to come in. I mean, I had all kinds of agendas for today, but I'm telling you, I'm going to submit my agenda to his agenda. His agenda is to come into your garden. You know, some of you have never let him in before. You live your entire life by your mind, by your discipline, by your self-control, by you. You live your whole life that way. And now, I tell you what, the most scary thing I've ever done is open that gate. Right? Jesus, come on in. He wants in. He says that I'm a perfect partner to him. I'm like, well, Jesus, don't you know that I don't even talk right very often? Jesus, don't you know my past? Jesus, don't you know everything? Why would you want to come in this garden? I've decided to trust him. He's smarter than me. That's a surprise to some of you, I'm sure. Right? He may be smarter than you. And he says he loves your garden. And your garden has a lot of parts to it, just like this garden in the picture. There's 1,000 different things in my garden. Jesus has a way. He wants to come and taste the fruits of our lives with him. You see, here's the next passage. He says this in verse 13. This is who Jesus says you are. He says, your inward life is now sprouting, bringing forth fruit. You see, the Shulamite bride's been on a journey of going from total self-judging and condemning herself to actually starting to believe maybe that she is beautiful. And as she's begun to believe that, she's cracked that gate open just a little bit because Jesus has unlocked it, and she's cracked it open. And when she cracked it open, he blew on her. It's the same term that says when God reached down into the dirt and picked up some dirt and he breathed life into it. He created man out of the dirt and he resuscitated it with his own breath. That's what happens when you open the heart of your heart. The Lord goes, and when he blows on you, life comes out. He says it's really fruit. It produces something when I let him blow on me. What a beautiful paradise unfolds within you. Did you know that that's what's inside of you? That's what's inside of you, not what you say is inside of you, and not what the world says inside of you, not what your checkbook says is inside of you, or the police, or the government, or anybody else in the world. Jesus says that there's a beautiful paradise inside of you. All you have to do is open up and let him in. He says, when I'm near you, I smell aromas of the finest spices. Do you know that in these days, spices were worth more than gold, right? They traded spices. It was the most precious thing because spices brought flavor to the food. Spices preserved the food. They were the most important thing there was. Spices were worth more than gold per its weight volume. And Jesus said, when you let me in, when you let me come in near to you, I smell something. And it's because you let him in. And what happens, he says, for many clusters of my exquisite fruit now grow within your inner garden. You see, what determines the outcome of our lives is how much we're able to open up our hearts. Because the more I can open my heart, the more you can open your heart, the more he'll breathe on you. And when he breathes on you, it produces fruit. And you know, fruit is for the nations, right? It's for the nations. It's for you and for your family and for your world and for the economy and for the government and for morality and every issue that we face in this world. The fruit in our lives is for the nations. And God has created us to do that. The fruit it's really hard for us to believe this, that there's a garden locked up inside of each one of us, and it's unique to each one of us. What's your destiny? You see, you didn't know this probably, but your destiny, you do have one. And he goes into this next passage. He talks about this. He says, here are the 9. This is the fruit inside of you. And if you look in Galatians chapter 5, you find the same 9 things happening. The fruit of the Spirit. The common thing about the fruit he's fixing to go through is it's all imported. It wasn't natural to Israel. It's imported. You know what the fruit of the Spirit is inside of our lives? When you open up your heart and you begin to let Jesus come in, faithfulness, gentleness, kindness, self-control, love, joy, peace, patience. Those are produced when you allow the Lord to blow. Just allow Him to come into your heart. And He blows, and what comes out is beautiful. And it's not from you, it's from Him. And these 9 fruits he talks about, if we had time, I'd go through all of them because it's really cool. It's funny, and James, a brother of Jesus, his half-brother, he said, don't be deceived, my dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights. You see, you mean the outcome of my life depends upon how much of my heart I can open up and allow Jesus to come into? Yes. Because every good and perfect gift comes from Him. Everything you desire comes from Him. Love comes from Him. Patience comes from Him. Self-control comes from Him. Goodness, meekness, it all comes from Him. And the power of God comes from Him, which happens as you open your heart. And you see, I think some of us have never opened our hearts. We're still holding stuff in. We're still living in this world that's not our heart. And Jesus wants in. And he says this, pomegranates. Pomegranates are a lot like a lot of our hearts, aren't they? I'm pretty familiar with them because Jeannie's from Brazil and we see those things. We even had a tree in our backyard in Fort Worth, a pomegranate tree. Have you ever seen one? The fruit, do not bite the fruit like an apple. They do not taste good. They have a hard outer shell, right? And if you crack the shell open, there's hundreds and hundreds of seeds inside of them and a very sweet fruit. And the same thing's true for you and me. The pomegranate is wonderful. It's beautiful. It smells wonderful when you crack them open, but you've got to open them up in order for the seeds to come out. And a lot of our hearts are the same way. Those walls we put up, the barriers we've built, the moats we've created, the drawbridges, the locked door, those are all things that we've done to keep people away from what's on the inside, particularly God. And God said, if you'll open up, you'll find that there's not just a fruit that you can eat that's wonderful right now. There are seeds so that you can go from one pomegranate to a whole forest of pomegranate trees. You see, we were created to change the world. And it depends on how much we open up. It's funny. He says henna from heaven. Henna, it was interesting when I looked this up because these were interesting things. Do you know henna is a tree which yields a fluid that creates a red dye. You see, it's about the blood. Everything comes from Him. It's all about Jesus. And when I open my heart to God, I'm opening my heart to the Lord because the Lord has made it a way for us to come into God's presence. And it's about the blood. It signifies the shed blood on the cross. And in Song of Songs 114, it said, He's like a bouquet. The king, the Shulamite, said, He's like a bouquet of henna blossoms plucked near the vines at the fountain of the Lamb. You see, every one of these words has huge, huge significance and meaning. Nard, it talks about that, the spikenard, so sweet. Nard was what the woman poured on Jesus' feet when she broke the alabaster box, remember? Before His crucifixion. The Bible says that she broke it and she poured the oil out. It was so valuable. It was like it was her entire her future. Everything was wrapped up in that. It was so valuable. And she poured it out on him. And he took that smell with him all the way to the cross. And you see, something happens when we open up our hearts to Jesus. It releases an aroma that fills the room. And the world will tell you, that's stupid. Isn't that what they said to her? Why is she doing that? Why is she wasting a year's wages or whatever on just that? That's dumb. The world will say you don't need to give Jesus everything. The world will say you're not good enough. The world will say, why would you do that? Why don't you take care of yourself? Why are you giving your life to children? Why are you giving your life to the poor? Why are you giving your life? Live, have fun. But there's something that creates an aroma in the world when I open my heart to Him. And it doesn't just affect me, it affects everybody in the room. You see, you were created to affect the nations, to affect the room. Nard also, the root word of nard is light, you know. See, Jesus is the light. In 1 John 1:5 it says, this is the message we have heard from Him and declare to you. God is light. I've got a country song going in my head right now. Looking for love in all the wrong places. But I changed the word love to light. In my mind, it didn't come out love, it came light. I've been looking for light in all the wrong places. Light comes from one source, and it's Him, and He comes when you open up your heart. When you take the risk, when you do the hardest thing you've ever done, and you say, Jesus, have all of me. Have the good, have the successes, have the bad, have it all, Jesus. And it's all about the light, isn't it? And only Jesus has the key. And really, you could go on. Some of these, they're beautiful, but I don't want to spend time doing that. You can go through those as you're studying it. Study cinnamon, study calamus, study saffron. They're all significant pictures of Jesus and what He did for us. And they're very, very important. Of course, you know, aloe, and aloe as eagles ascending. Aloe, y'all know the aloe vera plant? It's like the heal all whatever thing. Its healing is in His wings. By His stripes you're healed. Do you want to fix your family or relational issues? Give your heart to Him. Do you want to fix your physical body? Him. Do you want to have a society come into peace and the government? It's Him. Healing is all wrapped up inside of Him. And then it's funny. Here's what He says. Your life, this is what He says to you. The Lord says this to you. Your life flows into mine, pure as a garden spring, a well of living water. See the analogy to Jesus and the woman at the well? He said, I'll give you water that you'll never get thirsty again. And now He says, your water. He says, you are a well of living water. It springs up from within you. It's like a mountain brook flowing into my heart. Do you know you please Him? That when you, by faith, trust Him and open your heart to Him, it produces a living water flows out of you. And it pleases Him. It's hard for you and me to imagine that we please Him. That His agenda was you today. And not to fix you. That's not His agenda. His agenda is you. And He said, that's what happens. This is what happens whenever you give me your heart. It becomes a well of living water and it springs up. And that's true. Now, it changes. Now the Shulamite. See, this is her response to the king. The king has said, this is the truth. This is the truth. And now she gets to respond to him. And look how she responds. This is what she says to him. Then may your awakening breath blow upon my life until I am fully yours. Have you made that decision that you're going to open up every part of yourself to Him so that He can blow over your life until you all belong to Him? Everything in you belongs to Him. That's her response to Him. Now, I know the truth is we do that in steps and we all have compartments. And we let him into this part, and we let him in this part, but we're not letting him into that part. And we're not going to let him into that part, and I don't even know about the part back there yet, but when I do, I have to make the decision again to let him in. And it's a constant in my life. Jesus, come in. I'll trust you. I'll trust you. I'll let the walls down. Because Jesus, if your breath blows on me, it's going to release an aroma and fruit that'll change the world. And it all depends on his breath. So this is what she says. Breathe upon me with your spirit wind. You know, when I see that, it reminds me of the beginning again. You know, it's funny. She says, stir up the sweet spice of your life within me. Who created us? God. Whose image were we created in? God's. He wants you. And she said, you stir up your life in me. You see, there's life inside of you that was placed there by God that only his breath can awaken. He wants you to open your heart, and he wants to blow. And when he blows, what was dark becomes light. What was dead lives. And all of a sudden it blooms. You know, it's funny, when I walked out of the building yesterday afternoon, you know, it was raining yesterday afternoon off and on, right? And we have all these bushes around the building and flowers and all that. And I walked out into the parking lot, and there was nobody here, just me. And I just got hit right in the face with the most beautiful smells. I love rain. I love dirt. I love the spring. I love the honeysuckle smells of flowers. I sneeze and I love it all at the same time. You know, the air was so thick you could, had to wipe my glasses off when I got out, right? Something happens when he blows on us. You see, she said this. This is her response to him. Whatever it takes for me to open my heart to you, Jesus, do it. Spare nothing as you make me your fruitful garden. Hold nothing back until I release your fragrance. You see, there's a fragrance inside of me and inside of you. That's what I was talking about. Tim and I are taking that. Because of you, our lives have been changed. And there's a fragrance that we're going to carry into Nicaragua that's going to be a blessing to them. It's going to be spices. It's going to be fruit. Jesus is asking you today, will you make a decision to not hold anything back from him? And I'm not talking logic and reason. And listen, it does not make sense to do this. But this is what he wants. And you know, it's interesting. If you're looking at a different version of the Bible, it talks about the north wind and the south wind. The way he translates that is hold nothing back. You know, a lot of us, there's times in our lives when it's hard. You ever gone through a hard time? Are you in the middle of one right now? It's hard. Will you give that to him? Will you open your heart and say, Jesus, I'm not doing so good. I'm not, my journey, what I did yesterday, what happened to me last week, it's not so good, Lord. Now my mind is a mess. It is full of chaos. God, my body's a mess. My family's a mess. Everything about me, God, is a mess. It's hard. My life is hard. I take 2 steps forward and I fall back 3, God. God, I've tried to get up and I've been slapped down 1,000 times. I've failed every time. You see, I believe some of us in here are in that place, right? Do you know that he wants that? He wants the hard. Do you know Jesus, before he went to the cross, right before he went to the cross, he's walking he's going up to pray with his disciples, and he passes a fig tree, right? It's great story. This isn't a parable. This really happened. Jesus and his disciples are going up to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he passes a fig tree, and it's springtime. Well, the fruit's supposed to happen in the fall. I have a fig tree in my front yard. The fruit happens in the fall. But in Israel, there's a fruit that sets after the summer fruit has already been picked. Another fruit sets, and it matures through the hard winter. And it doesn't get as big. There's not as many of them, but they're the most sweet, delectable figs of the year. And that tree should have had winter figs on it. You see, when the beautiful things in our life are formed is during the cold, hard wind. During when things are hard. You see, Jesus walked by the tree and he looked for fruit and there wasn't any there, and he cursed the tree. And the next day when they came back by it, the tree was dead. The disciples were just amazed. You see, you and I were created to produce fruit. But a lot of us don't open our hearts to Jesus when it's hard. When we're struggling, when we don't understand, when things don't make sense, when it looks chaotic, when it looks like we'll never ever make it, we don't give that part of us to God. Because many of us were taught that God doesn't want that part. He doesn't want your unforgiveness. He doesn't want to see you angry. He doesn't want to see you misbehaving. Listen, Jesus said, I want it all. Will you give it all to me? Listen, there's been a time in my life when I didn't think I could hear God. I really didn't. Everybody else was hearing God, having visions, dreams. I mean, I'm hanging out with back, you guys weren't around in the 80s and 90s, but the biggest wig prophetic people in the world. I remember standing beside Jack Deere and saying, Jack, how in the world are you doing this? I can't do it. He'd call people out and read their mail and all this stuff. And well, I can't hear God. So I just decided to just serve God and not worry about it anymore. And see, some of you are in the same spot. You don't think you can hear the Lord. You don't think you haven't heard him. You don't think. Listen, he wants you to give that to him. You see, it's also, I'll get there, but we're going to stop here. But Bethany, would you come on up? There's a north wind. He wants you to open your heart to him in the north wind. But there's also the good times in your life when everything's going great, right? When you're on the top. When you can survive and everything's beautiful and you don't even need to talk to God anymore. You see, he wants you to open your heart to him when things are great too. When everything's going right, not just when they crash. But this morning, I really feel like God wants to do this. And I want to do it the way I heard it, which this isn't a normal end of the service ministry time, really. But I want to do it this way. Y'all hear the rhythm in this song? I'm not a musician, but I can hear that. And do you know that in your heart, maybe you haven't experienced it, but in your heart there's a rhythm that matches his? And what he said is you're his favorite instrument. But there's places in your heart you haven't allowed him to pick you up and to blow over your life. You haven't allowed him to breathe life into you in those areas. And you're struggling. Maybe you're in a dark place and you just can't feel his presence. You can't hear him. He's silent to you. I believe that God wants to do a miracle today. So I want to do an exercise. I'm going to try not to set you guys up for this because I want you, if you want to, fine. If you don't, that's fine. But you know what? I think I'm not the only one who's had dark times. Mine happened to be decades when I didn't think I could hear God. That's sort of a pitiful way to live, really. And then I found out through friends' help that I do hear God. And it changed my life. You see, this morning there's a lot of friends in here. These guys have changed my life. They can help you change yours too. So what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do this. I'm going to do three things. First, I'm going to ask you in just a second. Don't do it yet. if you've ever gone through one of those seasons where you couldn't find God's presence, where you couldn't feel His presence, where you couldn't hear Him, He couldn't, and I don't mean speaking to you, the voice, I mean where He was, you weren't able to discern Him communicating to you, where you were hurting and you just were alone. I'm going to ask if you ever had a time like that in your life where it's just hard. I'm going to ask you to stand up in just a second. And there'll be a lot of us stand up. I don't think I'm the only one. But then I'm going to ask you to do something else. Second step. So go ahead and stand up if you want to. We'll go ahead. Y'all already started leading, so we'll let you lead. Not everybody stand up unless you just want to. Whatever. I don't care. I've got a reason behind this because God said my agenda today. God said, Alan, you've got an agenda. Everybody here's got an agenda today. He said, I have an agenda today, and it's to have an encounter with my children that I love. It's to blow into hearts that don't feel me. So I think He wants to do something. So now I'm going to ask you if I'm going to point around down the room like this, back and forth. And when I point at you, as really a testimony to Him, if God showed up in your life already in that area you're thinking about, then I want you to sit down, okay, when I point at you. Because it's a testimony. Yeah, I was lost, but I'm found. And I'm not talking about salvation only, going to heaven. I was in a dark place, and He brought me out. When I point at you, if you've had that encounter already, I want you to sit down. And then I'm going to ask you to pray for the people around you that are still standing up. Because we're not alone. You're not alone. There's people here that want to help you have an encounter with God. And that's the only thing that really matters. And then we'll have healing prayer teams and we'll have a ministry time. But so I'm going to do that, and then I just pray that God would give you courage to remain standing if you need a touch from Him today. We've all been there. Everybody standing up's been there. But a lot of us have been touched. Well, if you've been touched, you can help somebody else. Okay? So, if God's already touched you, I'm going to point at you. And when I point at you and He's touched you, He's met you in that place, I just want you to sit down, okay? I'm going to start over here with Bill. Okay. I'm going around. You just have to watch me point. I'm going to stay on this side. Okay, I'm over here. That's a great testimony. You guys are like sponging. Okay. So now I just release you. Ask the Lord if there's a word God wants you to give somebody who's standing up. I'm just going to release you to pray for the people around you, okay? We're just going to take a couple of minutes, and then we're going to finish. So if you're sitting down, you can get up now to pray for people. And ask the Lord. I believe you're going to carry healing in your hands.